Joe has extensive experience supporting our clients through architecture, design, product evaluations, and implementation of various cybersecurity technologies. He has worked for numerous large enterprises who will remain nameless, but are noted on his LinkedIn profile. He brings incredible experience and passion to align security goals with business needs. His deepest expertise resides in the areas of application and data security, identity, endpoint and mobile security, vulnerability management, and compliance. Joe, thanks for your time today. Take it away, sir.
Sounds good. Go ahead and share this up here for everyone. So topic today that we're going to talk about is privileged access management. So really kind of continuing on the theme of the human element. Privileged access management is a good topic there. So first, what exactly is privileged access management? So it's the process and systems that secure and monitor account credentials that have elevated permissions to critical corporate systems. Really, it's managing any of those accesses that are higher than what a normal user would need. This is access to critical systems such as firewalls, important valuable servers, your identity sources such as Active Directory, and really making sure that those are not just accessed as a part of normal everyday business, except where needed. So why is it important? So we look at the 2021 data breach investigation report, and it shows that 37% of all breaches involve the use of stolen credentials. Now, one thing that number doesn't sound very big, but if you start digging into it and start looking at the data behind it, that's your initial access. And once an attacker gets into the environment, they start to look for ways to elevate permissions, ways to get to more critical systems, ways to be able to move around the environment and start to do more damage and take more action in the environment. Then we start to look at another response from the 2020 Identity and Access Management Report. 49% of organizations have at least some users with more access than they need for their jobs. Really, this leads to a situation where once an attacker gets into the environment, if they're able to get past that first element of the human, as we just discussed, they're that much closer to being able to elevate privileges, move around the environment with less impedance, and really able to do what they need to do. So when we take the idea of stolen credentials and users that have more access than they need, these stolen credentials that are already privileged access make it easier for the attacker to move laterally in the environment, find more data, cause more havoc, and then it really increases those chances for a domain takeover. The thing to consider there is when you have a domain takeover, this is someone where suddenly you have new domain admins. They can now move around the environment as they need to, and you really want to keep them away from being able to get that as much as possible. So PAM's place in the identity space is really side by side with identity and access management and identity governance and administration. Identity and access management is really where you're discussing how do you get access to systems. So this is single sign-on, multi-factor authentication, adaptive MFA, so that you can take additional steps if user behavior starts to be a little bit differently. Then you have identity governance and administration, where this is really making sure that people have access to what they're supposed to have and making sure that they don't have too much, and really automating those processes to make sure that everybody gets what they need. Today, we're going to be focusing on the privileged access management, and this is where we talk about locking down those advanced credentials and those advanced secrets that allow people to move around the environment and take different actions on systems in the environment. So the first component when you're looking at a tool around privileged access management is really the vault. And this is the hardened storage of credentials. This is where you can put your domain admins, your local admins, your service accounts, your database admin accounts. This is really where you want to lock these away so that you can start to put workflows in place to be able to access them. So this This basically makes it to where users can't go through, or an attacker can't come through, compromise one account, and suddenly they're at the keys of the castle. You can start to put MFA, as we heard before, you can put MFA in front of these privileged accounts to make sure that they're only used when they're needing to be used. You can put authorization, you can put multi-approvals to be able to get to these accounts to make sure that they're only used when absolutely necessary and not a part of common everyday use. Once you have those in these storage, this hardened storage location, you can also define how people can be able to get to those credentials. One way to think about it is that if you have a password manager and you go in, you open it up, you look at those passwords, now you could jot that down, you could put it someplace. Now it's outside of those controls. With many PAM solutions that are out there, you can make it to where it's a one-click connect. So now this user who needs access to these privileged account when they need it still doesn't even know what that password is. This further removes the capabilities of the compromise getting further into the environment. Another area that I like to point out here is that with a lot of customers that we see that start to go down the privileged account management road, oftentimes they'll quickly get domain admin accounts vaulted in. They'll start to get local admin accounts vaulted in. And one of the challenges is that you really want to look through all of the accounts that you have in your environment and determine where is a normal user doing normal things on their system, and where should they really make that extra step and go pull out those additional credentials to do those additional activities in the environment. Many times we see where service accounts don't necessarily get rolled in or they get forgotten. We see SSH keys, we see different cloud application accounts that kind of sit behind, and those are areas where an attacker may get in. They may not get domain admin, but they can start to take action on these service accounts, and that's another avenue in. Another component of privileged access management tools is really password management. So this is where policies define how often to rotate passwords, what the password length is, what the password complexity is. This allows the removal of a user going through making constant changes where now they remember those passwords, or the challenge of keeping those passwords small and possibly simple, just meeting the bare minimums of what a password complexity would be, so that they're able to type these in different areas where they need to be. This makes it to where now, if someone goes through, uses those credentials, and they get caught up in memory, those credentials can now be rotated, and now nobody again knows what they are. They're in the system, they have to be checked out again. You see over on the right, I did bring up where how Kerber roasting works. So Kerber roasting is a low effort, high value, high value, low risk attack that an attacker can use in the environment. Just based on the ability to be able to pull back a ticket from a service account, crack that offline, and be able to take that and run further into the environment with it. One of the values of the password management in a PAM solution is by vaulting those credentials and having them regularly rotated by the system, you can make the password very long. So make it 20 characters, make it 21, make it 25. Make it as long as you need to be able to slow down their ability to crack it offline in a quick fashion, and then set it to rotate once a week. So if it takes a 20-character password months, years to be cracked, but you're rotating it every week, at that point, by the time they're actually able to use the effort and realize the value from all that effort, it's already lost, it's already gone. And this is something where Kerber roasting is available out there. It's a quick search, and they can completely show you how to do it. Again, it's not too terribly difficult. Now, another part with password management is you do have account validation. So this is the ability for an account that someone may have gone in, change that password manually. You can have a privileged account management solution go through, check to see if it has been changed, and if it has, go through and take that control back, right? You don't want to have this access just out there with a couple of people having having access to it. You don't want to have it out there available in memory where someone may be able to get in, move around the environment, scrape memory, and take that on to the next steps. A third component that's very important for privileged account management is around session management. So this is where, again, as we discussed before, you've vaulted these credentials. They're in a secure container. You've defined a password rotation around these accounts to make sure that they're constantly being rotated, that they don't get stale. They're not useful for long periods of time. So now, how do you further secure them away from an end user's system where they could potentially be picked up and used later on in an attack, as we discussed before? So this is where secure connections, using jump hosts, isolating those credentials away from the endpoint where the user's doing normal web browsing activity, where they're checking their email, where these types of attacks first start and then start to break out from. Using session recording. You can see full videos of the GUI and what a user is doing in the environment as they move through, as they take action on the endpoints that are being secured through a PAM solution, so that you can later review and determine was something malicious done, or say potentially there was an outage or something that was unplanned. What exactly were the steps that led up to that? You can also see, typically with session recordings, full keystroke recordings. This is the ability to be able to see the commands that are coming in as the user's typing them, as that privileged user is typing them, to be able to understand, create alerting off of it. What we're also seeing now is session analytics. So this is where we're taking these recordings and now we're actually able to monitor in real time what's going on. Do you need to have a domain admin normally open users and computers and move somebody into the domain admins group? Probably not. That's something that really should flow through a normal work process. But now with the monitoring that can go on as a part of these session recordings, that can be detected and actually stopped until someone reviews it, or that's something that can alert security teams to shut down that session and take that account back. So it's starting to move more towards not just accessing and monitoring the activity that's going on, but also taking action on the type of behavior that's seen with these privileged accounts. So when we go through all of this and we look at what PAM provides, we talked earlier and we've heard a lot about stolen credentials, that human element. PAM really reduces the impact of those stolen credentials because now those stolen credentials are only for regular users. You're not having someone that's having their credentials stolen and they have access to 2 or 3 databases that have all of your data in it. They don't have domain admin rights. They don't have access to the firewall directly with that account. So now the attacker has to continue to move in the environment, and that adds more risk to them being detected. It reduces the risk of privileged access abuse. So this is a situation where if you're looking in the news and you see someone gets fired and they decide to go through and take action in the environment and delete accounts or do something that's unsafe for the business and something that's retaliatory, now you've created a situation where they have to take extra steps to be able to go through into these systems and affect change in the environment. You can have approval processes that reduce the risks of what someone can do with their normal credentials and remove that capability of being the abuse that can happen there. You've also reduced the operational overhead for password management. This is one where we see a lot of value for customers because typically you want to rotate your credentials on a regular basis. And the more access that these have, the more often you want to rotate them so they can't be cracked, they can't be used in the environment for nefarious deeds. But unfortunately, when you start talking about a user having to log in, change that password, then go to everywhere it's possibly used if it's a service account, go to everyone, then let them know what the new password is when you're talking about potentially a domain admin account. This reduces a lot of that overhead and just automatically handles that as things are needed in the environment. Another value that it brings is centralized management and auditing of privileged activity. So again, You have workflows in place. You know who approved it. You know who checked it out at any given time. And one of the values that I've seen in the past is that, if there's a breach from a stolen credential or some kind of activity where forensics has to get involved and they start asking questions around, did you really do that? Was that, we saw your account doing these things. We need to come through and determine, was that something you were doing, or was that something where it got stolen? Having that centralized management and auditing gives that visibility of, I checked it out, I checked it back in, and now if we start seeing activity, we know that there's a high probability that that was something else in the environment and we can respond to it. That's everything for my presentation on privileged account management, heavily focused on the capabilities of some of the tools out there, but obviously the processes are important as well. Thank you for your time.